Alright, it's time for the Hollyoaks weekly roundup. I'm back again and I'm full of beans. I'm ready to go, I'm raring to go, and I have actually written a bit of a topic list for this one. The main topics we're going to talk about being Dylan, being baby James's dad, Mercedes' story as she has struggled with a cancer, but she's somewhat embraced it in a very empowering angle. And we're going to talk about JJ's collapse, his leukemia, and we're going to discuss whether they are actually trying to redeem an abuser. All and that and more as part of the weekly roundup. The script is continuing. I'm a bit way through my second draft. I'm about halfway through, so give it some time and I will get there. But it's definitely slowly cooking, and you know, eventually it'll come out. And we just need we need Ethan's exit to happen now, and we need Diane's exit to happen, and then I should be able to finalize everything. But yeah. Alright, so the main topics. Let's start off with the initial one. So in this week's episodes, it was revealed, like I predicted, that Dylan is baby James's dad. And the baby James, that is Leah's baby, who she named after James Nightingale as a lovely little thing for Steve. Steve is going to take care of Leah's child and is going to raise it. And now it's set aside because Hollyoaks did a thing. They introduced Lucas and Dylan, and they made it a very slow burn. Will they, won't they get together? Lucas had to confront his I don't want to be gay, and then conversion therapy was practiced on him. So they had this very slow burn. Will they get together? If you've been around the block with soaps, you've seen this happen not thousand times, but you've seen this happen tens of times where, Todd, I don't even remember who fucking Todd gets with, Sophie and Sean, John Paul and Craig. There's so many characters where it's will they, won't they, I love you, but I hate myself. And it happens very often and constantly happens in soaps, Ben Mitchell, for example. But they had this very sweet story where Dylan and Lucas do genuinely care each other, and they do genuinely love each other. And they finally got together. It was all sunshine and roses. The ship was finally together. We made it, boys. We made it through the rough times. And then when they And then after the time jump, Lucas is in Young Offenders. Why is he in Young Offenders? Because he attacked JJ after hearing what he did to Frankie. So, and in that time, Leah had lost James and Steve was in a coma. So that left her on her own, probably with Leela, for a year. But it pretty much left her on her own, isolated from her family. And I'm sure Dylan was missing Lucas as well. So it seems like they had a drunken one-night stand. And that is how baby James was conceived. And look, I've been there. This isn't my ship. I'm not a person who gets deeply invested in couples anymore. It's not my thing. I like the show as a whole. I don't need to live vicariously through my ships. I don't need it anymore. I'm an adult now. I did it in the past. I loved Sophie and Maddie in Coronation Street. I loved Kim and anyone, even though she didn't really have the best relationships. I loved Summer and Sienna. I used to enjoy these ships a lot more, but through time, having to see it in a bit more of a, how is the whole show doing? It's not my thing anymore. And yeah, sure, in the reactions, I've been making a lot of jokes of people just being like, no, you're ruining Dylan. Can we bring back to can we just make it not happen? Why did they do this to my favourite character? It's like, guys, is this your first fucking ship? Sorry, boys. Mate, how many gay men in Hollyoaks have kids? You know what I mean? How many gay men in Hollyoaks have kids? How many times in soap do people get together, it's all happy, and then they suddenly ruin it because they self-destructed? It happens a lot. It happens a lot. The second they become happy, they can't help themselves. They go and do something stupid. And that's, you know, it's a soap trope. It's unfortunate, but it happens, right? Just, I don't know why people are so blindsided by this one. I predicted that Lucas was going to be the dad immediately. I clipped it up in the reactions, I found the clips, and I went, it's Dylan's, it's definitely Dylan's. Right, and like, they showed the baby. It was pretty obvious who the dad was, and even then, so I mean, it's just a fucking soap thing in general. Like, of course he's the fucking dad. He's his brother's fucking, he's her brother's boyfriend. Soap 101. And I've seen a lot of people are crying because suddenly now they've ruined Dylan's character. He's now selfish. He's now caused problems. Like, look, eventually they will inevitably get back together. They'll have this big scuffle. It'll be angsty. They'll be upset with each other. But they'll get back together. And I'm sure they'll even raise baby James together. You know? That's how I see it happening. Leah was moved to, you know, she's gone now. She's out of the way. James going to take after Steve's going to take after the baby. And Lucas will probably end up helping, not realizing it'll be a big secret, and it'll come out and it'll wreck the relationship. But eventually they'll get back together because they just can't bloody stop loving each other. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's so hated currently. Like, yes, the relationship isn't perfect, but like, you do remember that the second that obviously he was being indoctrinated in a sense at the time, but the second they came out with their feelings for each other, Lucas fucking beat him to death. He beat him to death, and suddenly that doesn't ruin Lucas, because, you know, that wasn't Lucas. He was being controlled by Carter. He had all these bad things. He's not the same guy anymore. He still beat him to fucking death. You know what I'm saying? Dylan could have died. They got through that. They'll get through him having a baby with his sister, for fuck's sake. It's just a lot of wild, frantic, like, no, you're ruining my favourite character. Dylan, stroke his hair again, please. Please, Dylan. Like, I joke, I've been there. I have, you know, this isn't my shit, but I've been here before. I've loved these characters. I've loved the relationships. We all do it. We're soap fans. We love this shit. But yeah, as I'm on the outside with this one, I do get to take the piss because, like we said, it does feel like Babby's first ship. Of course he's the fucking dad. It's a soap. Why are you shocked? This happens all the fucking time. But yeah, and I suppose with that, I think I've done all of my bits about that piece. I mean, look, it's for how they're being set up after the time jump. Obviously, Luke's will get out fairly soon. I believe that him and Frankie are now friends again, so they will kind of reconvene. Frankie will figure out that Dylan is the dad, and this will cause a big bust up, and it will kind of make him choose for a while. And I generally think he'll probably choose Frankie for the time being, and then in the end, they'll eventually get back together because they realize they need each other, and they need to support Steve, and they need to support their family. There we are. Like, panic now, it'll be fine later. It's fine. You know, don't worry about it. So yeah, we are. That's the Dylan is baby James's dad. Now let's talk about Mercedes. I don't really have so much to talk about with this one, but this one's just a general recap because Mercedes had the scene of the week and probably one of the scenes of the year. in Hollyoaks, and they are really... Because... So, as of this time, Mercedes has cancer, and she is dealing with cancer. She has a stoma bag. Like, she has a stoma put in, which is, you know, how you kind of... It collects all of your waste, right? And they show that she isn't getting the treatment didn't work like she wanted, and they think that it would be beneficial for her to get on these new sort of drugs. But unfortunately, they can't get a hold of it, so she struggles. And there's this scene where she takes off the wig and she dresses down, takes a look at herself in the mirror, sees everything the cancer's done to her, and just kind of stands there like, you know, what's the fucking point? Is any of this worth it? But she plays a tape that Donnie made, and it's all of her friends, you know, playing songs and like chatting to her, and it gives her this sense of confidence. She starts to dance away the darkness. She embraces herself, and it gives her that sense of hope. And it was a really good scene, because it's this big emotional, because you never see Mercedes is never really, she is the vulnerable type because we've seen her at her lowest, but outwardly she never wants to be that vulnerable person, and this is stripping her of all of what she believed she is. She's struggling, she has to do shit differently now. It's not as easy for her anymore. She's a struggling mum dealing with cancer, a single mum as well. And it's just a really poignant scene. Like, if you are... Obviously, I'm not as in... My emotions are kind of regulated enough, but I'm also not really a crier anymore. I've not really cried in a long time, because shit's all generally quite positive. But if there's any scenes that are going to make you fucking burst into tears, it's how vulnerable and how emotional this scene is. And it's like, I don't know, it was so good. It was such a good scene because it played with your emotions. You go, oh, fuck, yeah, this is miserable. Jesus Christ, how are you going to deal with this? This is awful. And then you slowly see her gain that confidence again. You see a big return to being Mercedes. And then in like another scene, she's just having a dance in the kitchen at Casa, and she's having a great time. The wig's off. Freddie sees her and says, look, I can probably get you the drugs. You know? I've not been able to get the epilepsy medication that Lexi needs. I can probably get you your meds. So she hugs him and then says, look, you still look great, Mercedes, but in a Freddy way. But yeah, the Mercedes stuff, at the end of the day, it's some very strong material, and full credit to Jennifer Metcalf, who is nailing this. And like I said, I made a point of it in the reactions, but Mercedes is the soap icon of Hollyoaks. Like, yeah, sure, Tony's been there for a long time, and Cindy was there for a long time, and you know, Sienna is a recent kind of soap icon of the show. Darren is kind of ascending to that like higher level, but Mercedes is the face of Hollyoaks, and she probably always will be. She's given so many years of the show, of her life to the show, and she is generally rewarded for it. She's always given a lot of really good material to work with, and Mercedes is always a character that everybody loves. She is truly a soap icon, and it would have been a shock had she left, and they decided it's time to rebuild the show around Mercedes, because she is that important character. She carries it so well. And that's what you can see. Like, obviously, and like Steve as well. Steve is also that character, right? Steve probably is a bit less like loved because he's not as much of a good actor. Like, I mean, there's always that favorite interview where he did when he was talking about Dancing on Ice. Like, oh, would you reckon you'd ever leave Hollyoaks? And he just kind of went, nah, I'm a bit of a shit actor, mate. nah, not really. Obviously, he's grown leaps and bounds as an actor since then. but I do genuinely like him. Like, the pillars of the show currently are Steve, Mercedes, and Sienna. Those three are and Darren, of course, Darren and Nancy. Those four are the pillars of the show right now. And you can see that it's all grounded around their families, right? It's all very important for their families. And that's a really important part. And it's something that was always going to be inevitable. It's why I genuinely believe Cindy was cut, is because for the last, 4 years, Cindy's family has been, 2 people. But ever since Dirk died and Holly left, it's been over for Cindy. She's never had that extra family, which means she stays and has, extra drama to deal with, as opposed to her own. It's why the McQueens weren't touched, because ultimately they can all bounce off each other's drama, and they all support each other in their own way. But with Cindy, you had her and Luke and Ollie for a little bit, but then Luke died and Ollie left. Then she was left alone. Then she was left with Zara and Grace as her family, and Grace got axed and Zara left. And then you have Dave as her family, and then for the last minute, Tom is family again, despite being on the show the whole time and them never really interacting, unless she was genuinely in trouble. And it's a very, you need that family grounded reality. You can see that these actors have been bolstered. Jack Osbourne is doing shit on the show again. Tony is probably gonna, get with Maxine. And they're gonna have their family unit. Sienna and Ethan are binded together. Obviously, Ethan's probably leaving. The Roscoes are bound together with Grace and Rex to bolster that family. That's generally how I believe they viewed it, because if these characters are all related, the best example I can give is when Cindy came back in EastEnders. Obviously, she died off screen in 98 or 99 or something, roughly that time period. But she died off screen, and Ian was set to raise all of her children. And then when it was announced that she was going to come back, everybody went, yeah, but she's coming back, but there's only really Bobby and Kathy on the show who would internally react to Cindy still being alive. And obviously already established at this point were the Knights, who also happened to be Cindy's ex-husband and Cindy's 2 daughters, all of whom would be more and more kind of reactive, and as well as bring in the original actor Thomas Law for Peter and Ian with her. Now that's a whole fucking family that you build around, that you can have constant drama and constant cycles. That's exactly what Hollyoaks wanted to do with this. And I think that the general, and EastEnders generally got rid of all the gangster drama at this point. I think they realised it's kind of a tired trope, so they wanted to take it back to the 80s and 90s, where it was a bit less crime-filled and a bit more grounded in that family reality, because that's where a lot of the drama comes from. And that is how I believe Hollyoaks decided to rebuild itself. I know nobody asked, but there'll be all that in the fucking every Hollyoaks character that was axed and why. But yeah, so, and I suppose finally, as a result, let's get into the final topic, which is, can you redeem an abuser? Between this and the Dylan stuff, there's been a lot of uproar at Hollyoaks in the last couple of days, simply because they've made the choice. And it kind of goes into a much greater point in general. So obviously, JJ hasn't stood trial. Jack wanted a confession out of him, but the day of the trial, he finds himself collapsing and therefore diagnosed with leukemia. This leaving Darren in an impossible position where obviously he wants to support Frankie. He wants to support Frankie because he is, he is her dad and he loves her and he wants her to do well. And he wants to make sure she feels safe she wants to make her feel as safe as she possibly can be. But now his other son, and this is Darren, who is fundamentally, if he's a failure in a lot of things, if there's one thing he's not a bad dad. And no matter what your kids do, it's hard to cut them off. And I can understand from that perspective. Like, take Dot's relationship with Nick in EastEnders. Nick tried to kill Dot multiple times, tried to steal all the money, like killed a grandson, tried to fleece her for everything he humanly could. But still, in the end, despite being an abuser, a killer, a murderer, a drug addict, everything she believed against, in the end, she would always choose Nick, because that's her boy. She knew him when he was young, she knew him before all of the bad times. And I feel like as a parent, not that I am a parent, you always want to internally see that good in your kid, and you never want to see them in pain or dying. And that is the dilemma that Darren has to deal with. Does he support his son knowing what he did to his daughter? Or what JJ did to his daughter? Like, it's just a very unfortunate state of play. And I can understand everybody saying, like, yes, it does delay this storyline. We thought we were just going to get justice, and it was just ripped out under us. But still, even then so, Darren and Jack are really the only ones who are actually somewhat trying to support JJ. And I don't even think they're trying that hard. Like, it's still within that notion of, I'm glad you're not dead, but I'm also not going to be your fucking friend. You still did what you did. Misbah even says most people don't get a second chance, and just kind of gave him the cold shoulder. And I don't think they're trying to redeem the character, because they can't. He is a serial abuser and a rapist. He has constantly abused his sister in a really sick and twisted way, and made her feel like it was her fault, and made her feel like she was unlovable. I don't think those things can ever be redeemed. What I do think perhaps may happen is I do think this cancer scare will make JJ realize what he was doing is wrong, and perhaps he will genuinely apologize, and this will give some sense of closure to Frankie. But fundamentally, JJ is a manipulator. He tries to bend things to his will, so there's a high chance he's playing it up. He used the first chance he could to ask if he could go home, and he kind of went, and Darren went, no, like, you caused this. You aren't the victim here. Yes, you have cancer, but you have caused all of these problems for yourself. So, do I think they're redeeming the character? I don't think so. Obviously, there's an angle for it. There is an angle if you wanted to do it. I'm not saying or supporting this angle, but there is a way you can try to rationalize the character. In Coronation Street, one of my favourite storylines of all time is the Tyrone and Kirsty Soames domestic abuse storyline, where she, got into Tyrone's life, and it all started all nice, but slowly but surely she started losing her temper, and she started beating up her husband. And each time, he was hurt, but he went back to her because he thought she would stop. And it never did. And then they had a baby, and he thought then it would stop as well. He thought it would finally end now that their baby Ruby was born. But whilst they're doing this, they're still building up reasons to sympathize why Kirsty was doing this. Why she would hit Tyrone. And they even showed her dad, who was much worse than she was in a sense. And it not necessarily humanized the actions, but it gave a lot of room for sympathy for the character. And you could explore what made JJ this way. I'm not fucking buying it. I don't want to fucking know he is an abuser and needs to be fucking sent down. I 100% believe in that. But if you are telling this story and you want it to have more of a positive conclusion, you could have him try to, do counseling, do therapy, go to do some, go to jail, but have him slowly but surely apologize and acknowledge Frankie's trauma and acknowledge that he was the reason why this started. If he addresses his behavior, I'm sure there is a world where you could try and redeem the character. I personally wouldn't. I would not try JJ is a fucking terrible person, a serial manipulator, abuser, and rapist. I don't think there's any world where he can be redeemed at all. And just to wrap round fully, at the end of the week, we saw Frankie talk to Lucas where she said, maybe I need to drop the charges, which I think is a fucking bad idea. And if they do drop the charges, it feels like it's only a matter of time before he either outs himself as still being that same abuser, or the Hollyoaks way, which is him dying trying to protect Frankie. So in some twisted justice, he pays for his actions while actually stepping up for his sister. I don't know where they're gonna go with this. I simply don't. And don't get me caught off guard. Like, don't fucking act like I'm saying I want him to be redeemed. I don't. I hate JJ as a character. He makes me sick. He makes my skin crawl. I hate what he did to Frankie, and I'm on Frankie's side 100% of the way. But there are different angles for the stories you could go, and just because it's not the one we expect doesn't mean it's not going to be a good one. Obviously, depending on where it goes, it has ramifications for this story, because I believe this story has been one of the best Hollyoaks has delivered, and if they make it a very unsatisfying conclusion, obviously that will knock it down a couple of pegs. But finally, it's that unfortunate reality that most abusers never get comeuppance. And that kind of wraps around to a more soap-wide point, as it has been teased that in the next next week or something, there's seemingly 4 abusers in soaps that are either going to get off free for their actions, where you have Joel Deering in Coronation Street, who, spoilers, it appears Joel Deering commits suicide. And in EastEnders, it appears Pastor Clayton, Yolande's rapist, is going to commit suicide. And I'm not entirely sure with this one, but it also seems like Tom King is perhaps going to die. That last one, I'm not entirely sure, but the first one, I'm 100% sure in. And obviously JJ having leukemia, which means once again it's another abuser not getting justice. And I found it to be quite a interesting conversation point, because, and this is probably gonna be where it's getting a bit more bleak, is that unfortunately in most circumstances most abusers never get their comeuppance. And this is just as we've put Dean Wicks in jail for a 10-year-old historical rape that he committed 10 years ago. As much as it's one of those things where, and I don't want to be that guy, but everybody wants realism. We all want realism in our soap. But also, it would be exceptionally dishonest and irresponsible to tell a story where every single abuser gets their comeuppance, because simply that doesn't happen. And it is disgusting. It is genuinely disgusting, and I despise it, and there should be no place for it. And there should be a way better system of dealing with this sort of thing, because it clearly doesn't fucking work. But at the end of the day, just to fully wrap it round in case I've lost my point, if we want realism, we unfortunately have to deal with the grim reality. Most victims never get justice, and most abusers never have comeuppance, and that is the sad and upsetting fact about it. So, do I think JJ in the end will get his comeuppance? I do. I do genuinely think he will get his comeuppance. Do I want him to get redemption? No, I fucking don't. I don't believe any of it. I think he is a scumbag abuser who has endangered and constantly harassed and abused his sister. It's wrong. It is fucking awful. Do I see an angle where they may try to redeem him in a way? Yes, I do. There's a high chance they try to do it. But at the end of the day, you can't redeem a abuser. You can't redeem a serial rapist. It's not on the cards, and I highly doubt that it will. And it's not going to be like suddenly he has leukemia, so everybody's like, oh, how you doing, JJ? Everybody's still holding him at a fucking 6 foot gap in between them. Like, don't you fucking go near me. So as much as we've all, yes, this may not have been the outcome we would have wanted, and yes, it does delay it, I'm going to hold my breath, and I'm going to wait and see what Hollyoaks do before I make my judgment on it. I don't think it's as dire as everybody believes it will be, and I do believe that Frankie in the end will get justice. That has been the Hollyoaks Weekly Roundup. Join me in the next one. See you then. Bye bye.